I reckon it'll be 20 minutes all in.
We'll find out.
Be a nice edit, wouldn't it?
Oh, that'd be great.
Done before breakfast.
Yeah. I'll do it tonight. I'll do it before dinner.
Do it on the night.
Yeah, it is the night. Do it on the night. Right, here we go then. Oh, hello and welcome to another episode of the O3C podcast, coming to you from O3C Games. My name is Jonathan Dunn, and I am joined by one of my oldest friends, one of my dearest compatriots. It's Chris Dow.
Bottled in Yorkshire.
And we are going to be chatting about video games. Right, announcements. Before we dive into our latest episode, we wanted to do the usual plug of asking you, if you are able and inclined to do so, please do head over to our Patreon page, patreon.com/O3CGames, and consider pledging some monetary support to us. We would be hugely grateful of any support you can show us. Even if you can't pledge any money regularly, you can find a one-off donation button on our website, o3c.games, on the support page. And if you are cash-ready poor, then just sharing the podcast on social media or giving us a review and a cheeky 5-star rating on your podcast app would also be hugely appreciated. For those of you inclined to subscribe on Patreon, you will get a ton of exclusive perks, such as full bonus episodes, deleted scenes and outtakes, all of the episodes of this season ad-free, uncut, and in video form as well, as gaining access to the O3C Discord server, where you can join our merry band of communiteers, chatting about everything from video games to other video games.
There's a channel about books. There's one post in there.
I tried.
That's good.
So, we are back. Last week, Chris, I think Chris is gone.
No, I'm good.
So, we are back. Last week, we chatted about the latest couple of Playdate games, Hyper Meteor and Zipper. That was great. And, chatted about some other stuff as well. Go back and listen if you haven't, because it was really, really good. It was really good. We also said that we're going to be putting a hold on our fortnight challenges for the current period of now. So these episodes, like the one today, is going to be possibly a slightly slimmer affair, as we're going to update each other and you on what we've been playing in the last week. You know as well as we do, some weeks are slim, some weeks are absolutely chock full of gaming content. So, hey, let's see what happens. You know what? I'm going to kick us off. I'm going to tell you about a game I've played, because it follows on nicely from last week, because it is a game that you played on the Playdate, and it is Zipper, because I lied about playing it last week. No, I didn't. It's one of the games that you sideloaded onto your Playdate and talked about last week, The King's Dungeon, the little mini micro Metroidvania. And it's a really good game. It's really good fun. I did my first run of the first world in about 14 minutes. I think I got on my first run. And I really do like the idea of doing these short Metroidvania runs, which work really, really well on the Playdate. But I think, like, for me, because I don't really go in for score chasing games, I'd rather it was a full game, because I would happily play that for like 3 or 4 hours, certainly. Yeah. Or if it was a roguelike and randomized your runs to a degree each time, which I know that's basically saying, make another game. But I also did like having these just little endorphin boosting Metroidvania upgrades. Yeah. Like, they just come to you every minute, every couple of minutes. And that's just really nice, because, it's always nice to be like, you unlocked a double jump, and I'm happy to get that just in my life every 15 minutes. Like, I didn't realise I kind of needed it as much as I do. But I'm looking forward to trying the second world that's available on the game. And I think it'll be interesting to see how the game develops. Like, I don't know if more worlds are going to be added, or if different modes are going to be implemented, things like that. But it's a really, really good addition to the Playdate library. It's totally different to anything that's part of the official first season. So, it's a definite recommend from me. What have you played this week, Chris?
This whole week, pretty much everything I'm going to talk about today, I would say it's a comfort week. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Rice pudding games.
I love rice pudding. Really do.
Yeah,
love
me
rice
too.
pudding.
Yeah.
I just don't seem to have much free time at the moment. So I'm making podcast notes for these episodes in the downtime between school tasks or when I first get up in the morning. I've been playing games in like the little stolen windows between other worky things or scheduled things that I need to go at and be at or do or whatever. So it's been a bit slim in terms of like having the time to start something big and new. I've played more Fish and Feathers that I mentioned from the Playdate last week. It is now my de facto reward game, I think, to play for 5 minutes between lesson planning or whatever else I'm working on at my laptop. Very little to add to what I said about it last week, other than this is still a perfect little arcade experience that fits these pockets of time perfectly. And I think we take these things for granted now, but it also highlights how important instantly resuming games is on any format.
Yeah.
This instant on is now industry standard across the Xbox consoles, the PS5, the Switch, the Steam Deck, and even the tiny Playdate. And I think it really speaks to the era that potentially having this feature dropped on any future hardware by any manufacturer would feel to me like an almost impossible loss at this point.
Yeah.
It's so important. And
it's dangerous though. Because
it can be.
The way you say, like, you have like little 5-minute bursts of reward gaming. Like there have been times when I've been like, oh, I've written a sentence here. Let's do a run on Returnal. And then it's dinner time.
These things do happen. With Babylon's Fall now a distant memory, the PlayStation 5 has been relegated temporarily back to being the streaming box for Netflix et al. At the moment. Sonic is still the next game I want to play. It's sat next to the TV ready. But I feel like it needs slightly more than tiny 15-minute chunks of time in which to actually enjoy it properly.
I think certainly at the start, like you need to find, like, it'd be nice for you to have like a couple of hours where you can make a good start on it, because then I think actually it does work quite well in little bursts.
Well, and then the instant resume of the PS5. Take it to the bank.
Yeah.
On the subject of streaming though, can we mention how mad it is that in 2023, 2.5 years after the PlayStation 5's launch, there is no way to access services like iPlayer on the console. Like most of the big sort of names are there. BBC iPlayer is not. So I find myself amazed sometimes that not only does the machine basically have no exclusives worth worrying about to justify buying it over something else, but it also isn't even keeping pace with other machines that are just offering standard streaming apps.
Like the USB stick.
I don't understand. I just don't understand. Like, whilst I'm having my little PS5 dig as well, because, get in, when they're down, give them a kick in. I think it's worth committing to tape a big, hearty laugh, like laugh out loud, actually, to the news that Sony's Posho £200 controller that aims to rival Microsoft's Elite Pad has a battery life of just under 6 hours on a full charge, versus the Xbox's 40 for the Xbox Elite.
I didn't realise it was that.
It's bananas.
That's crazy.
People have said it feels great. It does all these wonderful things. And I know it's going to draw more power with its magic triggers and special vibration and whatever else that the Xbox One doesn't have. But that is a bonkers number. It really is.
It's not great, is it?
And it's another example, I think, of Sony this generation just not reading the room. Like in all sorts of areas, like the way they did the PlayStation Plus subscriptions, the way they are not forefronting any money into actual games.
Or making
there's all these
machines.
sorts of things. Yeah, all these sorts of things.
Even
but anyway,
like PSVR 2, I like today, it was the first time I went on and thought, let me just have a little look and see if stock's available for me to pre-order, if I did want to.
Yeah.
And I didn't quite realise how expensive it is.
It's more than the console, isn't it?
It's £550.
Yeah.
I am not buying that.
I can't. I physically can't. As much as I was more interested in the way that only Chris Dow could be more interested, because Tetris is getting another port and it'll be slightly shinier. Rez is getting another port and be slightly shinier. Thumper's getting another port. Like all these things that I was like, I do like these games, but I can play these games already and I don't need to spend $500 to do so again. That's
mad, isn't it?
That's silly. That's silly.
It's crazy. I mean, honestly, like if you're gonna, I mean, the Meta Quest 2, which I've got, is half the price of that.
Yeah.
And And that doesn't even require. I mean, but it's not, because it's all contained.
Yeah.
So it's really a quarter of the price, because if you have to buy a PS5 and PSVR 2,
it's a cool £1,000.
It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it for OLED eye panels.
I don't know. Maybe I'll play one day, and I will maybe I'll play one day and genuinely be blown away, and that will change everything. And I'll say, no, this is what VR needs to be. But for the time being, if the biggest draw is you can play the games you already enjoy and have played in this exact format, but it will be sharper, it's like, even I can call my jets on that one. What else have you been playing?
Well, over on the Switch, nothing.
Switch.
I've still got Mario and Rabbids sat there, Xenoblade 3, Bayonetta 3, and more that I need to get back to at some point. And to be fair, I would be playing Metroid Prime Trilogy on the Switch if I could. But instead, over on the Steam Deck, I completed Metroid Prime 1, which even 21 years on remains such an incredibly tight game. So pure and efficient in everything it does. It's just a brilliant, brilliant game. One of the things I've forgotten is actually just how tense and scary the game gets in places.
Yeah.
That sense of isolation is palpable throughout. But then you get these moments when you're plunged into total darkness and you've only got like your thermal visor to find your way through space pirate infested laboratories. And then like Metroids will be like smashing out of their glass tanks. And it's just, there's so much spooky stuff. Like you get these, at a certain point in the game, you get these spectral Chozo ghosts that then the entire area you're in just descends into darkness and they just haunt you. And they're really, and like the sound they make, it's this sort of like banshee scream. And then
sounds like I'd love it.
Yeah, you'd have a great time, mate.
Sounds like my cup of tea.
Even when, like Metroids themselves, which are just a fantastic design anyway, and they do bring with them a sense of terror, and you can just hear their like clicking parasitic noises just echoing around the vast spaces. It's great. It's so great. I've forgotten how much I enjoyed the final section of the game as well, because like after you've sort of done everything, you then need to descend into the impact crater. That's like your next thing you need to do. But in order to do that, you need to round up 12 Chozo artifacts that are scattered around the world. And if you've got like the right abilities unlocked, you can stumble across one or two of them as you play through the game. But they are really, really well hidden. And when you get to this point in the game where you need to get, all 12 of these, you can get clues as to where they might be, and then you have to use all of your abilities and upgrades that you've accrued throughout the game to then go and find them all. And it's just really, really good fun. It's a good opportunity to go back through areas you've already been through and spot things you might have missed before and get some extra missile upgrades or some energy tank upgrades. And then you've got the just amazing Meta Ridley boss fight before your final stretch in the impact crater, and then the multi-phase final boss fight against Metroid Prime. It's just brilliant, even if there is a degree of colourblind unfriendliness to that fight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So when I finished Metroid Prime 1, I decided to pull a Chris Dow and have a bit of a tinker with the Prime Hack settings and stuff to see if I could get the HD textures mod working for my Metroid Prime 2 playthrough. And there are some just brilliant, clear, useful guides online as to how to get this set up, and the community-made texture packs really are absolutely stunning. Literally every element of the game has been shown some love, from the enemies to Samus to the environments to the skies to the UI to the HUD and the menus. Like everything has a crisp and sharp upgrade, which makes the game look totally stunning. I mean, to be fair, the game still looks beautiful, just being natively upscaled to HD, because the art design of the original is just really pure and focused. But these new elements like genuinely make it look like, a current gen game.
Silly,
Unfortunately,
isn't it?
I haven't been able to get the Steam Deck to handle the full kit and caboodle. And I'm not sure if it can. I don't really know how to figure out if the deck can handle it, or if I need to do more tinkering with various things. And I don't have the same love and patience for tinkering that you do. So, I'm quite happy to settle for some broader strokes compromises with this. So I disabled the majority of the HD textures for the world and the enemies and everything, but I have left the HD user interface on, and some of the Samus textures on, and a couple of other little graphical mods like making your crosshair nice and small and neat instead of the arrogantly giant reticule you're usually stuck with. And I've left on like the improved sky graphics, which look nice, and the Steam Deck has no issues handling the ones I've left on. But seeing as I've got all of the elements to make this game fully HD now, I am actually tempted to get it, maybe even like install like a Linux partition on my iMac Pro and get it running on there, because you can also play it with a mouse and keyboard, which is fucking mental. So yeah, I may well get around to that at some point. But in the meantime, I have made a proper start on Metroid Prime 2, which it's really good. Although I don't think it holds a candle to the first game, really. Certainly not in the early stages of Metroid Prime 2, which just feel a bit messy and undesigned. And it's also significantly more colourblind, unfriendly than Metroid Prime 1, which is a bit annoying because it causes me to waste a lot of various types of different ammo on trying to open doors that I think are the different colours than they actually are. There's a few causes of this general messiness, chiefly with the implementation of this game's key mechanic, which is the light and dark worlds, which are these polar opposites, alternate dimensions. So every single area in the game has a light and a dark version, and you find portals to take you between them. And if you're exploring on the dark version, the atmosphere is corrosive. So when you're in it, you're constantly losing health unless you can find your way to light beacons that are conveniently scattered around. And I remember being frustrated by this mechanic when I first played the game because it feels like a lazy way to make the game harder. And it also it kills the pacing of the game because you do slowly recover health when you're in sort of one of these light beacons. So like early on, when you haven't got much health and you haven't found any energy tanks to give you, sort of expendable health, you just sort of stop and wait to recover health so you can get to the next beacon. And for a game like Metroid, which has always felt, I mean, certainly to me, like a game that, encourages and rewards exploration, it kind of snuffs that out, which is a bit of a shame. And even when, you do get upgrades to reduce the damage you take in the Dark World, I mean, from what I remember, it's not until like really late into the game that you get a suit that totally nullifies this damage, and then you can explore a bit more freely. And it does make certainly some of the boss fights feel more stressful and unfair rather than just tough, because you're focusing on the fight and your strategy, and then you might drift like at 1 pixel outside of a light beacon's range, not realise, and die because you couldn't keep track of five, six things at once. The other thing that I remember being just a little turned off by was the more developed story and wider world lore that's been introduced in this game, which is inevitable with any sort of sequel, that it's going to have to give you a reason to be playing this game again. So it's going to have to sort of crowbar in a few more things to make things interesting. But one of the things I love most about like my favourite Metroid games is the sense of isolation. That, you need to sort of then piece together the history and events of the world you're in by exploring. I don't really want to stop for conversations with anyone. And I don't really care about finding out about the Galactic Federation, which makes the story in the world here feel just a bit more like the Star Wars prequels than I really want it to.
But if you don't do that, how are you going to know what goes on in Federation Force? The true, final... I don't know what I'm saying. The true endpoint for the Metroid franchise. Yep.
And I know that Metroid Prime... it was an issue that I had with Metroid Prime Hunters on the DS, because they chucked in like all of these rival bounty hunters, which I know apparently reappear in Metroid Prime 3. But, I mean, those elements they're not that intrusive in Metroid Prime 2. And also there's an option in Prime Hack to allow you to skip cutscenes, which I don't remember being able to do in the original, but that helps just speed the slower bits up, help you just get back to the game if you are getting frustrated with those. But there's so many brilliant things in this game. Like I really like how they've doubled down on a lot of the successful elements from Metro Prime 1. Like there's more things being scannable for you to get info, much more morph ball stuff, which is really, really good fun. The graphical elements that make the dark stuff gloopy and spooky are very cool, and like the dusty atmosphere looks just insanely good. They've really tried to branch out with the different biomes that you're exploring as well, because the first Metroid Prime game is very archetypal. You've got grass, ice, fire, sand, and now you've got like these like ruins, and you've got like a toxic bog, and then you've got this like high-tech sky fortress, which is really, really cool. And then on top of that, you've got the Dark World versions of them, and there's a lot of really, really nice sort of organic design. And yeah, there's still I'm probably about halfway through, and I've stumbled across some hints of other weapons and mechanics that I've only really just remembered are in the game, which has given me lots to look forward to. And yeah, even though I don't think it is as focused and tight as Metroid Prime 1, it's still a fantastic game, and I am having a real blast playing it. And yeah, it's not going to be long till I'm through it and quite happily moving on to Metroid Prime 3, I'm sure.
And then Federation Force.
Yeah. I mean, you say that. Why not? I'll give it a go.
Why not?
I've never played it.
I've
never played it.
Feels bad to play.
Oh.
I as I do with lots of things, I played it for like an hour or two, and that's it, just at the beginning. I had none of the Metroid sort of connection to pull me through, so it just felt like a really poorly controlling first-person shooter on the 3DS. But
that's
anyway,
nasty.
Your mileage may vary. You might love it.
Yeah, I'll be up to see. I haven't even investigated it yet, whether or not there are any mods for Metroid Prime Hunters. Because like a lot of the charm of that was being able to play a game like Metroid Prime on a handheld. It was insane. The reality of it was not great. It was quite small and awkward to control, and it was a lot more shooty than explory.
I think the challenge would be you can emulate it fine.
Yeah.
And you can emulate the DS and it will be 8 times the resolution and everything else, and it will be fine. But the controls, unless someone has gone in and essentially reprogrammed or completely modified how the controls are input and interpreted, it's a game that relied on moving with the D-pad and dragging a stylus around. And I don't know how well that will work on any other button format, unless there's someone who's made...
keyboard.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of your only option.
Yeah.
But it might be out there. I've never looked into it, so it might be worth having a little butchers.
Have you played anything else this week?
Yeah.
Of course you bloody have.
On the Steam Deck, because it's always by the TV, there's been a few little sessions of Fairy Solitaire. I'm still chipping away at that. So we're about 3/4 of the way through. The game's pretty humongous adventure mode at this stage. I think we've got one passive upgrade left to purchase, and then there's other bits and pieces to mop up. But it would just be quite satisfying to get through the main story, even if I am skipping the story. I just like playing the card game. But I think it exemplifies the strength of the Steam Deck as one evening I can totter about stacking cards for 20 minutes, no problem, in a really casual game like this that's never had a console port, so this is the only way I could play it on the TV. And the next, I can play something like Forza Horizon 4, which I've also been doing.
Yeah.
I think I wrote this game off a little bit unfairly when I first picked it up on the deck, because I remember I played that alongside 2 other ancient racing games, and I was like, probably enjoyed Forza the least.
Yeah.
And I might have felt like that at the time, but in those few short sessions, I'd done maybe a handful of races, but I hadn't really got stuck in properly to what the whole world has to offer.
Yeah.
And what it has to offer is just outrun level driving all the time. And it's like, I don't even care what the missions and races are.
No.
It's just fun
to drive around.
It's just fun to get about. Like cruising around back roads in like a modest sports car. Doesn't have to be a screamer. Like just some little mini is fine.
Yeah.
Tearing through stone walls, drifting corners in the snow. It's so good. And you mentioned the gold standard of like Spider-Man and more recently Sonic Frontiers as games where you don't want to use quick travel.
Yeah.
That's Forza Horizon for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
absolutely.
I've spent so many little sessions in this game just looking for influence boards to smash or racing against speed camera sectors, because they let you see the map and just feel the road. And it's really, really good to do just that.
Yeah.
But, and I've put but in like the biggest capital letters in these notes, the game crashes all the time on the deck.
Does it?
When you play it for longer than about 20 minutes. And I can't for the life of me work out a solution. Like you said about tinkering earlier with Metroid Prime. When I was playing this before, when I kind of said, yeah, it's okay, and moved on, I was probably only playing 20 minutes. Just like a little test, a race or so, and that was it. And I wasn't playing enough to realise the extent of the problem. But now I've been trying to actually play the game more seriously. And for once, I actually do want to sit down and play it for 2-3 hours. The depth of the issue has become a bit more apparent because it will crash without warning, sometimes after 10 minutes, sometimes after half an hour, sometimes at the title screen.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating. And it seems to be a known issue with the game on the deck, but with no known solution. Like people online say, oh, maybe a different Proton compatibility layer is going to do it. It doesn't. People have suggested like extending access to video RAM through the Steam Deck's BIOS, like, you know, going quite in depth to get things sorted. They've suggested using very specific in-game video configurations. But regardless of anything I've tweaked, either through those suggestions or through my own research, I just haven't had any joy. Like sometimes I can play a few races, think, oh, I must have fixed it, all's well. And then I'll hit hard lock when my car is just idling at the roadside. And then other times it will die as soon as I try and load the first event I want to do. No rhyme or reason. And I like at least approaching these things with like a technical mindset. I'm trying to do it scientifically and say, okay, let's figure out what's going on. It's not a CPU or a GPU bottleneck because the game runs perfectly for the time it's able to run. The console's not overheating. The crash is not obviously replicable in any meaningful way. So you can't say, oh, well, it's every time I've got that setting on, there's a problem. So something's happening there. It's like there is no one thing. And I've gone really super nerdy on this one, as I do from time to time, like checking the system clocks in real time to try and catch any flashpoints that might be showing like what's actually happening behind the scenes. It's not a RAM issue. I've run the game with all the presets dropped basically as low as they can go, resolution halved pretty much, and it still has the same issue. So it's not overloading the RAM or anything like that. It's annoying though. And yet, even with this problem, I've still played for about 12 hours over the last 2 weeks, just in 10 or 15 minute chunks. So every time I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, and I get annoyed and stop. And then 15 minutes later, I just find myself booting up again.
Yeah.
Like, oh, the menu music's playing again. Here we go. I get all excited every time.
It's a rice pudding game.
Oh, completely. I know I could play this on my laptop and have a great time. Plug a controller in, it's right there. I could plug the laptop into the TV, put it in that way, and pretend I have a shiny Xbox Series whatever. But I don't want to. It's a perfect handheld game.
Yeah,
and
it is.
In the times I have been able to play, I've gone from feeling kind of so-so to the game, like I said before, to being genuinely desperate to play more. Yeah. And I really hope either Playground Games or the wider community are able to find a solution to this at some point, because I think I'd really like to properly finish this one. Or at the very least, just keep enjoying cruising about this particular truncated version of Scotland and the north of England.
Yeah.
One of the missions the other day, I had to drive up to Arthur's Seat, the highest point in Edinburgh. And it's not quite as high as it is in real life because it's quite a climb if you do it in real life. But still, what a drive.
Yeah.
Chucking my four-wheel drive off the top of the cliff and smashing down into town. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Fucking love it.
It's such a brilliant game. It really is. Like I think I've spoken about it before when I put it on my list and then took it off again and then thought about putting it back on again.
Yeah.
It's just it's just lovely. It's just really, really lovely. And I don't think I would enjoy Horizon 5 in anywhere near the same way because this is set in England and it's just really, again, like it's just really comforting.
Yeah. Yeah, the vibe of the whole place. I mean, it makes England look fucking gorgeous, and I can tell you,
best version.
I can tell you firsthand, it's miserable to live in.
Yeah.
but to drive around, it looks incredible.
Like if you haven't been to the UK, like don't go on that, or or Fireman Sam. Just
Have you played anything more recent and contemporary than Metroid Prime?
You know what? I bloody have. But I haven't gone too far from being isolated and terrified in space because I've been playing the brand new Dead Space remake.
Another game I will never pick up.
Oh, I tell you what, Chris, you do need to be a bit of a big brave boy to play this. And,
I bet you do.
Yeah, it's tasty. I mean, the atmosphere in this game is something else. I mean, it's lovely. it looks absolutely stunning. I mean, I'm playing it 30 frames per second for the 4K ray traced experience, and it's all just so cool. It's all just so cool. From what I remember from the original game, I don't think the gameplay's actually been changed at all.
Yeah.
I mean, which, it is huge credit to the original game and how, how revolutionary the sort of minimalist design of that was at the time. And it just continues to be so well executed, it almost hurts. Like you can see how they, way back in 2012, 2013, I think, when the game first came out, you could see how they picked up everything that Capcom had done with Resident Evil 4 in how much they evolved the survival horror genre and just elevated it, I mean, quite literally, into space. But they focused it with just a very refined design, and you can still see, the impact of it in games today. It's certainly the precursor to the single camera shot approach of like the modern God of War games. Yeah. And the remarkable HUD-less design is one that so many games try and emulate now. Even if it's not like a pure HUD-less game, you'll see games have the HUD disappear when you're not using it, just to sort of help immerse you more in the game. Yeah. And even like modern games with, like photo modes and stuff like that have an origin here, where you can just stand still and admire the design of the game and the perfect lighting and framing that comes with just every single second of Dead Space. Something I really hadn't remembered is, and certainly helped playing it in contrast to, well, not in contrast, in complement to Metroid Prime Trilogy, is it's such a Metroidvania. Yeah. Which I'd forgotten. Like, all the areas of this abandoned spaceship, they're all gated behind access codes and abilities that you'll find. And it's all just really well laid out. You've got this augmented reality wayfinder, so you can just easily see where you need to get to without even going into, loading up your map or projecting it onto the sky as it is in this game. There's a simple, it's basically like a fast travel system to different areas of the ship, but also like the layout of the ship is also shifting and changing because parts of the ship are, being blown up and attacked. So you then get these zero gravity sections linking parts of the ship, which they're just very cool, but very scary because, I mean, the concept is basically the same as like an underwater level on, on a Sonic game, with like the controls being more floaty and a depleting oxygen level. But this, for some reason, this just feels fun and more gamey than those absolutely horrific Sonic levels. But like, the tension that comes with these sections is so extraordinary because so much of the sound drops away. You've got your oxygen meter ticking down. And, I find I'm like inadvertently holding my breath as I'm trying to navigate Isaac through like a 3D space, but you're in all directions because you're in space you can turn any way you want. And then you've got to try and maintain your sense of perspective as part of the ship has like fallen away and is rotating as well. And it's all just quite brain boggling. And it's beautiful, brilliant game design. I love it. I love the story. I like the slowly unfolding reality of what's happened here and why. You sort of pick up traces of what's happened through audio logs and text logs that you find, and there's hints of this like religious fanaticism that sort of crept into the ship, and it's just really, really cool and really interesting. Although the amount of times the story requires you to reroute power across the ship, which means you very frequently have to choose between opening a door and turning all the lights off.
Love it.
It's always quite funny because it's like, oh, of course I have to choose between those two things. Or like you can leave the lights on and open the door, but you better believe the oxygen's going. Yeah. It's just amazingly tightly designed survival horror. The design of everything is just top notch. I'm just having such a great time playing it. It's weird that I would also class this as an RPG, a rice pudding game. But in the same way that I enjoyed playing, like,
but that has to be a new standard for this show.
Yeah. It's the name of the episode.
Keep along with that. Oh yeah, we could actually do these episodes could have a something.
Yeah, this
like
was
it,
my plan. That's why I latched onto rice pudding games so early and have weaved it back in. Design.
Always be editing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why they call me Abe. But like I did with playing Resident Evil 2 and 3, those remakes, and how I have been playing Resident Evil 4, for some reason I do find these games just really comforting. It's mad. I'm the opposite of you, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Which is good. It is, yeah. But I mean, I'll probably trade it in when I finished it. But I imagine I haven't even looked at what like the achievements or the trophies are for this game. But if it looks like it'll be fun to go and get those and tick them all off, then I may well do that. But if it looks like it's going to be a hassle, I'll be happy to play through this game, have a fantastic experience, trade it in, move on to the next one. But yeah, it's just so great. It's so great. I never played Dead Space 2 and 3, or there was a spin-off, I think, on the Wii, which was...
Yeah, I'd like a light gun shooter.
Yeah. So I've no idea if they'll go down the Resident Evil route and continue to remake, 2 and 3, but hey, hope they do. They're great. It is Resident Evil in space.
And for some, that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, what would, I think that's probably the missing link for you enjoying Resident Evil, is because I think you would enjoy that if you also couldn't breathe.
Probably.
That's what you needed.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what was missing from those playthroughs.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, you talk about tightly designed games. The last comfort game I've had this week is about as loose as can be. Because I've restarted the original Earth Defense Force via emulation this time, because I lost my 15 hours of progress when one of my old PlayStation 3s died.
Yeah.
So I'm on the deck. It looks better. It plays great, but it is a loose, wobbly game, as they all are. But I love it so much. Like, the series as a whole is such a great example of like proper popcorn gaming.
Yeah.
It's just very, very Moorish. I can sit and play for a long time, even if I'm not particularly engaged with what I'm even looking at. I'm currently on my second difficulty playthrough. If you remember, there's 5 in total. In this particular game, the first one, there's 25 stages. So you're essentially doing 25 stages times 5 if you're aiming to beat the whole thing properly. And I'm making pretty steady, solid progress as my character's beefing up their health and my weapon cache is growing. There's just something so satisfying about something so mindless. Yeah. And I'd argue that something like Vampire Survivors has loose connections to...
I was going to say...
Because even though you're not upgrading a character in real time throughout a stage in this game like you are in Vampire Survivors, you are, across the course of the game, getting stronger. And even though it's in third person and not viewed from above, the game is just about space management. And that's pretty much it. You're just avoiding enemies, shooting enemies, avoiding enemies, shooting enemies, collecting a power-up, shooting enemies, avoiding enemies. Just round and round and round. And
sounds like you would enjoy Dead Space. That's about space management.
This game as well, something I genuinely like about it is whether it's played on original hardware like the PS2, whether I played it via the PS3 in backwards compatibility mode, or now via emulation, the game can drop performance-wise to like single-digit frame rates, and it always makes me laugh. It always makes me laugh because it really feels like in the sort of design meetings of any of these games, it's that classic meme where someone says, like, how many ants do you want on screen? And the team just went, yes. We didn't worry about anything else. And especially when you get to the highest difficulties, there is so much going on that sometimes you'll finish a stage and it'll be like, mission complete. You'll be like, how? I literally haven't seen my character through like fire and flames for the last 30 minutes. I don't know what's happened.
That's funny.
If people want to play an Earth Defense Force game, there's loads to choose from. On Steam, on the PlayStation, whatever, generally, people seem to regard EDF 4.1 and EDF 5 as the strongest entries. But for me, there's just an inescapable charm to the early PlayStation and Xbox 360 entries because they're even more scrappy, they're even less balanced. But the trade-off is that, yes, you may need to grind as you get later into the game to have the health you need to survive difficult missions. But in return, you start unlocking weapons that are just much more stupid than the later entries and far more overpowered to the point where like rockets take 20 seconds to reload but will level half the map in one shot. Like it's so silly. It's so silly. Yeah. It's just big, stupid, dumb fun. And as I mentioned this week, mixed in with everything else, it's exactly what I needed and what I wanted to play. and it was right there to play.
Wonderful.
Rice pudding.
So there we are. Those are the games that we've been playing this week. An eclectic mix. Well, certainly an eclectic mix for Chris. For me, I've kept it scary and spacey.
Yep.
Like Kevin. No. Oh.
What?
Next week we will be returning with our Playdate update, where we're going to have played Questy Chess and Executive Golf DX.
Yes.
Very much looking forward to feeding back on that. And of course, we will update you on how we get on with our next week's worth of gaming. If you're enjoying what we're doing, please do consider supporting us either via Patreon, via a one-off donation, or just by sharing stuff on social media, or engaging with us on social media. We are at O3C Games on everything, or you can target us individually. I'm on Twitter at Jonathan Dunn.
And I live at Chaz_Hodges.
And we very much look forward to seeing you, hearing you, being with you here next week. Games. Mad.
I think you should cut it at that intonation of next week, because it was like like an unresolved cadence in music.
Yeah,
it was like, and where we go next.
I like to do that as much as I can.
Yeah.
Just in general, I find it very funny. Stop there.